Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Mental Health Gaming Podcast. Once again, I'm Bradley, and I think he's out of the queues at Primark now. But Stu, you there? And you good?
Yeah, loaded up with loads of cheap merch, so very happy.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous seeing shops opening and the queues at Primark and Sports Direct. It kind of makes you look at it and go, oh, well, not much is going to change.
I can understand why people do it or why some people are doing it, but the whole idea of it makes me just shiver, the idea of being that close to people. I'm not sure if I'm ever going to recover enough to mentally to just be close to people ever again.
No. And it's one of those things, it's weird because I don't blame the people because it's the decision was made for them to go and do it, so they're going to go and do it. But yeah, it's a discussion for later, possibly. But obviously, being good and staying indoors means hopefully we've been playing some games. And as usual, I'll let you start.
So I've had a go at Formula Retro Racing, which is a game strongly inspired, shall we say, by Virtua Racing, which is from way back in 1992. And flat shaded polygons, very gorgeous, and sort of mark the transition kind of between arcade games focusing on really flashy 2D graphics, pushing the sort of sprite scaling envelope as far as they could, and then the move to, using 3D models for stuff. And prior to that, it was all kind of like Sims, like loads of people have played like F-29 Retaliator and stuff like that. And Strike Eagle and things either in the arcade or at home, and loads of Sims. And it was like the first game you're like, whoa, this is like, you can play it like an arcade game, like you jump into it, really straightforward controls, what you'd expect, but also has an arcadey feel of immediacy and, bright and flashy, totally Sega. So kind of outrun but smartened up for a new gen. And yeah, that's a long way round to come to say that Formula Retro Racing just like rips it off completely, but in a kind way, in an homage. And let's face it, it's about time because there's hardly any of those. Like Sega even kind of moved away really fast from that with Daytona, which was, not flat shaded anymore. It was like bit mapped. I'm probably getting far too techie now, but anyway, it lacked that kind of child's building block look that really simple polygons have, and when you do them well, they look gorgeous. And Formula Retro Racing looks gorgeous, as you'd expect. It's kind of like similar styled courses to Virtua Racing. It's got far more. I think it's got more cars on the grid. Pretty sure that it has. It's like 18 or 20. It's a lot. So yeah, exactly, using the technology well, and it means that you can have that thing where you've got a big grid to overtake, and then there's a sort of lull, and then there's the back markers who you then have to overcome as well. So you're not just driving on an empty track if you're in first position, and all that's great and it looks lovely, but it has a lot of bugs. It's a very buggy game. I won't go into them in too much detail because I'm doing a review for the site, so you can read it there, but there's a good few quality of life bits and pieces and some physics stuff. It's not quite the perfect comeback for that style of game, but it's still worth looking at if you're into it.
Yeah, I'm tempted to take a look at this one, actually. Just as a slight aside to that, you mentioning Virtua Racing. My main experience of Virtua Racing was I loved the game, but I was put off it very early on. I remember when I was younger and my mum was kind of on a bit of a date with a guy she'd been seeing, and we went to a pub, I think it was, or a social club or something, and they had a Virtua Racing arcade machine at the pub. And I remember the guy mum was seeing at the time, he was just giving me loads of coins to go and stick into this machine and play it. And I was like, oh, I love this guy. This guy's really great. And so I started playing it. And I was telling my mum how great the guy was because he was giving me money to go and play it. And she said to me, she went, no, it's just not going to happen. I'm not seeing him anymore. And I got really upset. And I was like, well, I hate you, Mum. It's not fair. Oh. And she told me why. The reason he was giving me money to go and spend was because he was speaking to my mum. about wanting to take her and my sister, possibly my brother at the time, I can't remember, who were like still infants or toddlers. They weren't that old. Wanted to take them on holiday, but because I was older and wouldn't see him as a dad, he didn't want me to go.
Oh, wow.
So my mum basically ended it with him and just went, yeah, no, that's not happening. But I got really upset, but he was giving me money. So I didn't play virtual racing for years after that. It's only sort of like as I got a bit older and I saw it in arcades, I started playing again. Totally weird aside, but yeah, it brings up some, I don't want to say bad memories because I don't think they're bad, but it's some interesting memories.
It's weird, isn't it? Because like you don't, I don't have very many sort of negative associations around particular games because you're very often, especially when you're grown up, you'd be off in a separate room. And therefore, it's very difficult to have stuff impinge that would have like crushed the experience for you. I mean, I have very strong memories of after my dad died, I was playing Shinobi on the Master System a lot. But I'd been playing that before as well. But when I think of that game, I think of it in those sorts of terms, it brings that memory back. But most sort of going to the arcade stuff is just like pure joy because you only ever went there on days when, you were on holiday or having fun or whatever and stuff like that. But
yeah, I'm okay with this. I mean, Formula Retro Racing, it's an indie title, isn't it? It's not by any of the major developers.
That's right, it is, yeah. And as I say in the review, like you can tell the difference in polish from a AAA to a retro remaster. Well, not a remaster, but take aping that style. Even though it was like 30 years in the past, the level of polish that Sega put into stuff is just amazing, really.
So would you say, looking at it, because when I look at some homages, sometimes you look at an homage and you go, right, that was fans of the original that have wanted to just have it back again in some form. Or you look at something and go, well, that's a cynical cash grab. Where does this fit on that scale?
So it is like a lost sequel in a way. So it's exactly in the same sort of style and looks just as nice, but it's new courses. So you can't think of it in a cynical way whatsoever. And I think it's pitched very much. I would say that if you liked virtual racing, you'd love to get this and you will accept the flaws. I think if you're not that bothered and you're just looking for an arcade racer, you might have more of a challenging experience with it. Although, again, it's not awful by any stretch of the imagination. It's above average. It's just there are just a few things that knock it down from being great.
Excellent. Definitely one I'll look out for and give a try at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving on, I got sent The Outer Worlds on Switch. And I had my eye on this one for quite some time. I was always intrigued to see how this would pull. Mainly because I loved Fallout 3, especially New Vegas, and then we'll forget the other ones beyond that. But I love New Vegas, and knowing a lot of the team from that are behind this was, I was always on the lookout for it, and the ability to want to be able to play it portable was always a big factor for me, which is why I never played or briefly touched the Xbox version on Game Pass. And then I didn't really have the funds to buy it on release, so I let it go. I started hearing a lot of negatives about it's a bad pull, it looks grubby, it runs poorly, and those sort of things. So I've been playing it. I'm a couple of hours in, maybe 4 or 5 hours in, something like that. And right, it doesn't look as good as the Xbox One version, that's for sure. You get a fair amount of texture pop in and that kind of thing, but it doesn't matter. It still plays really well. If there is really bad frame rate issues, it's a slow enough paced game you don't notice it. But yeah, it's a really good game, and it definitely is. You can see that it is almost, you're talking about how Formula Retro Racing feels like what a sequel could have been to Virtua Racing. This almost feels like what a Fallout sequel to New Vegas could have been if handled by that same team and not moved on. The targeting systems work really well. You still got that thing where you're walking around and there's just so much to find and collect, and side missions and that kind of thing. Character animations are still janky as hell because that's what you get in those sort of games, and I like the charm of it. But yeah, it's a really interesting game, and obviously a lot of people know about the game, but as a port, we are not at the insane levels of what was managed with The Witcher, for example. And I do expect maybe a patch or two to improve it, but it's never as bad as what the most hysterical people decree. It plays fine, it looks fine. So, yeah.
That's great. I mean, it's really important, I think, that those technical boundaries are pushed. And even if it doesn't end up being flawless, they've squeezed everything till it absolutely screams to get this to work. And that's a great thing, because it's a game, I feel, that even with the amount of people who've got Game Pass, that it wouldn't reach the audience it probably deserved unless it had a Switch port.
So, yeah, the only thing I don't like with regards to these games where they get late Switch ports and things like that, and I'm hoping this is something that changes as we go, and I think we're on the right road, is just give me cross-save across every single platform. Because the main reason I wanted it on the Switch is I don't get as much time on the actual TV these days. I've got a partner who likes to watch a bit of TV when she comes home from work, and I'm not going to argue that point because she's working hard at an important job. I've got a teenager that wants his time on the consoles, and I've got a daughter that then wants to watch all kinds of kiddie crap on the TV as well. So my time on the TV is limited. So on the Switch, I'm glad to get anything that comes to the Switch. But there are times where I've gone, do you know what? I wouldn't mind booting this up on the Xbox, doing maybe an hour of the Outer Worlds, save it, and then come back to it on the Switch. And the way that obviously a lot of these companies now, especially Nintendo and Microsoft, are getting together and they're trying to do more to bridge the gap, even Sony getting in on the act. It's the one thing I want to see change, because the Outer Worlds is definitely the sort of game that benefits from being able to play across systems and pick up and play elsewhere. I'd quite happily buy a PC version down the line if I knew I could carry on from where I left off and then drop it back in some fashion, because I would imagine the data that's needed for that comes from basically code. So you're saying, look, this is the stage this person is at this game, write that code. You're not needing to carry over graphical assets and stuff like that. And I'm not turning around and saying, it's that easy, it's that simple, just do it. I know there's going to be a couple more complications, but we've seen cross-save with other things and cross-progression with other things, and it's the one thing I want to see added. I actually think it'd sell more copies that way as well.
I agree.
But yeah, that's my only real grudge.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Looking at it, it's like if games sold over the long tail, so if I think actually the Outer Worlds probably will have a long tail of sales, but most games, they're discounted to half their price in 6 months. And then within a year, you're looking at paying a tenth of what it was on release. And it's like, so how many more of those are you really thinking you're going to sell? So if you made it cross-save, then there may be more jumping back and forth between the releases, on different platforms, like you say, and drive interest in a game that may have dropped off the radar. So yeah, no, I can't see any reason, even on a business level, why they can't do it or why they shouldn't do it.
I think you got that spot on, because I think if you release the game if you released it at £50 with cross save across all platforms, then you're guaranteed to get a small percentage of people that will buy it full price on every single platform they own. That's going to happen. That is a tiny percentage. You're then going to get a few that will buy just the one copy with the intention of buying one copy, and then a few weeks down the line go, I want to play so-and-so game with my mate on this console, so I might actually pick it up on this console as well if there's no cross-play, but cross-progression. So you'd get those sales as well. And then you will get those who have bought it on one platform, and then you see it released on another platform down the line, or drastically reduced anywhere down the line. They're then going to pick it up knowing they haven't got to start again. And yeah, it does make business sense. I've never understood why it's not a thing when we know it's now possible.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. It's still a good port. Well, it's not a good port, but it's still an enjoyable game. I'm still really enjoying it.
Yeah.
Before I let you obviously get back to what you've been playing, there's one I want to touch on very briefly, and the review is on the site. But I have also been playing 1971 Project Helios, whichever. And it's a isometric turn-based strategy game set in a snowy future. And while the actual gameplay is fairly generic, it's good enough. I have got a massive crush. If we was talking in terms of like people you fancy, this is right up there. I've got a massive crush on the visual art style. It's a snowy overworld with this top-down view, with this isometric, top-down view, and everything just looks absolutely gorgeous. This game is dripping in atmosphere. It feels cold, and if you get a chance, just check it out. I'm not going to go too much into it, but the art style is absolutely sublime. I've got a lot of time for games where they don't zoom in as far as they need, like ultra fast. I look at the details in the face, but they keep the camera back far enough that you look at it and just go, wow. And yeah, this game has that in spades. But if you do get a chance, check out 1971 Project Helios.
Yeah, I'd seen that review. Yeah, I feel like that about games as well. It doesn't happen that often, but there are some that have such an intense atmosphere that you become totally enamored with them. Like D2 on the Dreamcast is one of my favorites. So like Kenji, it was a sequel to D on the Saturn, and it's not very well known, but it has some janky mechanics. But it just the atmosphere in that game. There's a snowy one as well. That's set in the Canadian wilderness, and yeah, my God, that you feel the cold when you're playing it. I love it when that happens.
Yeah, no, definitely. But yeah, that's on the Switch. I believe it is on other systems as well. But yeah, it looks great. I just wanted to touch on that one because that's the other major one I put a lot of time into. So what else have you been playing with?
I've been playing Halo 5 because I picked up an Xbox One. I'm really enjoying that, and I managed to get one brief game online with a friend of mine, and then
before you talk about that, please tell the listeners what version of an Xbox One you've got.
I got the Xbox One X Cyberpunk 2077 edition, which is very lovely. It was very expensive, and probably shouldn't have got it, but it is very lovely.
I don't care. It looks amazing, and I'm not at all jealous.
It is. It's completely daft. It's sitting next to I've got my PS4 next to it and the PS3 because I still stick that on occasionally, and it just looks so unusual and daft. But yeah.
Did you get an R2D2 Xbox 360 at any point, Stu?
I did not. No.
That's what you would just want. A nice collection of just the most insane, garish consoles just all lined up.
Yeah. No, that would be cool. I mean, that's kind of part of the reason I got it is because it looks weird but good, and it will probably be worth at least what I paid for it in the future. It'll cover part of an Xbox Series X at least. Yeah. So I've been playing. Yeah. So I played some Halo 5, which I'll talk about in a second. I played some Master Chief Collection, mostly Halo 2 maps with my friends, and that was really strange because we loved playing Halo 2 together back in the day, and going back to the maps and seeing them spruced up was amazing. Really enjoyed it. Got caned, but it was still great fun. But Halo 5 and single player, I'm really enjoying, and it's one of those that it divides people, and there's a lot of negativity about the Halo series because it's never quite recaptured what it did in the first installment. But if you take it on its own merits, it's still such a good game because the designs are great, the weapons are well balanced, and you enjoy getting to use all of them, and the AI on the enemies is still really exceptional, and it's arenas rather than just corridors. So that's amazingly, that's still a real feature these days because like the Call of Duty games are still very much corridory. So yeah, no, I really like it, and I don't see where all the hate comes from, to be quite honest.
Again, I think this is something that comes down to, I've noticed with certain series before. So if this was called Steve the Alien Space Defender or something like that, it would be held as one hell of a fantastic game. But because it's Halo and it's got this almost mythological level of reverence about it, reverence, you can edit whatever that bit is. It's got that about it. It's unless the games are nigh on perfect, they're always going to receive a level of hate. And the haters, I'm sorry, I don't want to use the term haters, but yeah, people who hate on games for certain things are gonna are going to be the most vocal, unfortunately, and that's what you start to hit, and then that spreads, and then those who were maybe on the fence start to, oh, maybe the game isn't as good as what I thought, and you get that. I remember like the Hitman games, as it Absolution, I think it was when that came out, and the hate that got because it wasn't a Hitman game, which is correct. It wasn't a traditional Hitman game, but it was still technically a very, very good game, an excellent game, in fact, but it just wasn't a Hitman game. And I've seen it with a couple of the updated Splinter Cells. And I remember thinking, I remember writing a review for, I'm going to say Blacklist, possibly, might have been Conviction. I write a review and say that if this was a licensed game under the 24 franchise, that's how long ago it was now, that 24 was still something you could reference, and Jack Bauer was the main character, then it would be held as a fantastic licensed title because it played really well. It just wasn't a Splinter Cell game. And I think that's sometimes the problem with licenses and with some of the mythos around certain titles, that it causes people not to like something that is technically still very good.
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely. Was Absolution the one with the sexy nuns?
Quite possibly, yes. It's the one that basically had all the markers around, say, pick this up, throw this, and wasn't like the completely open world Hitman that people were used to. Yeah. I mean, it was in the end, I suppose it's a good thing because it led to the proper reboot, and IO Interactive have now got the franchise themselves and can really lean into what they do best. But yeah, the game Absolution was still a good game. It just wasn't a good Hitman game. And I think that comes down to a lot of things sometimes.
Yeah, nothing has touched Halo, Combat Evolved really in that series, but each one has its own qualities and its own good, its own merits. So yeah, I would say play it. It's it's a great game.
Yeah, Halo 2 was, I found the story in Halo, single player in Halo 2 was crap, but boy, did I put a lot of multiplayer hours into that with my friends at the time.
Yeah, definitely better than Halo 3's multiplayer, which was good, but it wasn't anywhere near as good as Halo 2's.
No, even though I went back to it on Master Chief Collection and I sucked at it. Yeah. Because you're better when you play with your friends. You're not good when you play with people who dedicate a lot of time to playing games online.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, moving on, weird week for me with regards to my own mental health. I found myself having quite a few needless strops over the past week, and I'm completely unsure why. I think it comes down to not knowing what to think at the moment, and I'll try and explain that a bit better. For the past number of years, I'd get to around the middle of the month. The bills have just about managed to be paid, just about managed to get food on the table, just about got some electric to cover another week. And then I'll be getting that point going, the panic starts setting in about, I've got no money left. I don't know how I'm going to afford the rent at the end of the month. Scrabbling around to try and find any little bit of work. I think I almost found comfort in the fact that I was always stressed around this time of the month. But obviously now being on universal credit at the moment, what's changed now is, yes, we still have little money left come the middle of the month because, we're not all of a sudden lording it up on universal credit. But what's happening now, we're getting to the middle of the month and I'm not feeling the panic coming about the end of the month because I know I'm going to get that payment and I'm going to be able to afford my rent. So my brain is doing these weird things now because it needs to stress, but I can't find things to stress about. So I'm not even able to scrabble around for the work at the moment. So I can't get stressed that I can't find work. I can't get stressed that I can't do this and I can't do that. And that things aren't hunky-dory, obviously, and I would rather be working, but it's just a really weird situation to be in, that I'm more comfortable than I've been for years. But mentally, I'm not coping with it as well as I thought I would. Bizarrely, this is probably the most regular pattern I've had.
Perhaps it's just the general change there. I mean, I'm not trying to just find an answer for you. But
no, that's fine.
It all change is stressful, isn't it? Even if it's positive change, because your brain's rewiring itself. So it can cause, neurological pathways to be switching around and make things feel very weird. I mean, I feel weird all the time because the world is changing and my circumstances are changing. And even though I'm not like being negatively impacted by a lot of stuff because I've made sure I've changed to accommodate it, it still feels very strange, and I do feel like discombobulated and have weird dreams and things like that.
Yeah, that's the thing I've noticed actually. The dreams are just so much more vivid in the last few months.
Yeah. Yep.
And it seems to be something that everyone's been noting. I'd like to say, I hope someone's doing a study into what is causing this almost mass. I don't want to say. I suppose it is a mass hysteria in a way while we're sleeping.
Yeah. So definitely be a mass change. But yeah, because everything has changed. I don't think some people quite understand it yet, and because obviously you don't live for history, you just live for the day. And the immediate future. But I think when everyone looks back in a couple of years, they'll be like, God, yeah, my brain, my thought patterns, my dreams, everything just changed practically overnight.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd say one of the things that has really got to me as well is, and we mentioned it at the top of the episode, was seeing on the Monday, for whenever people listen to this, Monday the 15th of June in the UK when all the shops reopened. And then just seeing the footage on social media and the news of the queues and people just lining up for blocks just to get some cheap tat out of Primark or Scum Direct. And it was depressing to see. It's that those in charge knew exactly what we would do. And that's the collective we, obviously not me and you, Stu. I know you, unless you was in a queue at Primark, obviously. But, but the collective we would go out and we would spend our money. They was priming us for it with updates from people saying how credit card debt is at the lowest it's been for God knows how long. So we've got money to spend. All in the build up to going, the shops are now open. They've been priming us for weeks to go out on this day and spend. And the one that really depressed me, and it shows that things aren't going to change as smoothly as we'd hope. And I'm hoping that we do create a revolution, whether it's through protests or whatever, and that we aren't going to stand for this. The one that showed me things aren't going to change was the Sports Direct offering all NHS staff 50% off anything in the store. On the face of it, it's a good thing, but the 50% off was for one day only on the opening day. What they're not going to want to do is don't go and stand in those queues and put themselves at risk before then going back into a hospital with at-risk people. So on the face of it, you're going, yeah, it's a really good. It's 50% off to NHS staff, but a one-day offer of 50% off to NHS staff that my cashier knows full well none of them, or barely any, are going to take up because they know the risks or they just can't get there. It shows that it's evil. It's to try to make them look good, to get more people through the door. And at the end of the day, all it cares about is the bottom line. And that really, I think that was one of the things yesterday. I was in a stinking mood yesterday. And I think it was watching everyone fall for this hook, line and sinker and defending the reopening of shops. And it just really depressed me that the hopes I had that things were going to change have been manipulated out of people over the past weeks. And it's just so depressing to see.
It's a hard one to get over, definitely. If they'd done quite aside from the fact that it feels too early to be doing this, if they'd done it in a way that wasn't manipulative and exploitative, then you would have seen the people who sort of genuinely need to go and, buy some more pants because they're falling apart and need to get their kids some clothes, and, people who have, basically worn rags for the last few months because they've not been able to go out and get stuff. You would have seen those people go back to the shops, and then people who are a bit more intrepid. But like you say, when you drive people towards it through messaging and through ridiculous stunts like the 50% off thing, that's like saying, like you said, it's like saying there's free gold bar for you if you, come to Dubai tomorrow. Like, okay, can't do it, but, thanks for the offer. Yeah, it's just a load of bull, like you say, to get people to be manipulated into doing something that they really shouldn't really be doing.
And I promised myself, or I tried to promise myself, that I wouldn't go overly political on this, but it's hard. We know it's hard to avoid just with everything that's going on at the moment. But one of the other things that really sort of I noted was over the past week to 10 days with the Black Lives Matter protest and everything surrounding that, the issue around COVID-19 had kind of fallen away a little bit. It wasn't in the forefront of people's minds. And as much as you'll get governments coming out and condemning Black Lives Matter protests, but then Priti Patel claiming that it's only a small minority of racist thugs going out and doing things at the same time, because that's okay to condone. But having these happen, our government, especially the UK government, were loving this because it distracted from what they was trying to do. It's distracted from the manipulation they were trying to do, and that people, because they was focused on the other thing, they could subliminally put in the other stuff they needed and make bad decisions without as much recourse as they would get. You know, I don't want to be sort of like sounding like a conspiracy nut, but or anything like that. But the timing was perfect for them. It really was. The timing was perfect, and it's hoping that we'll look back at this and we will see that people finally woke up to what governments are trying to do, and that we wake up to it and we can be better people for it. But the initial thing, unfortunately, I think for me, it's put me on a downer when I was feeling so positive.
Yeah, I think there are positives to be taken from it. It's definitely a downer, but it's weird. COVID is kind of the bump in the road that has distracted from Brexit and Trump, which, is just a kind of coverall term for the move towards the right wing in the Western world. And it's following a curve. So the Brexit stuff and Trump getting in, and then this happening with Black Lives Matter, they're all interconnected. And the COVID thing is just kind of like peripheral to it almost. And it's been heading this way for a while. And it feels to me like the BLM thing is an expression of people turning on the right-wing view, because you can't be a right-winger and support Black Lives Matter. It doesn't compute, because class is tied up with it so much. And so many black people's lives are unfortunately discriminated against so that they're not in, there's no distribution in class. It's very difficult for them to break out of, their section of society because of the way that white people have treated them. So, yeah, it does feel like finally a good reaction, a positive reaction to the way the world has been turning in the West over the last few years. And that's one positive I'm taking from it. There's been a lot of people. There's been people who, they're complete idiots and messing it up for the rest of us. But it's so heartwarming to see so many people react positively to it. That's the best thing I've taken out of this week in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, so people who see our Twitter will notice I've tweeted, retweeted like quite a lot of posts that have supported Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ community, because not forget Pride Month is this month. That's easy to forget with everything that's going on at the moment. But I've done a lot of tweets in support of that as a straight white male. And I had someone mention to me, say, why are you supporting all this as much as you are? Why are you bringing as much attention to this as much as you are? And I just went, because it's not fair. And that's what it comes down to. As someone who supposedly should be in a privileged position as a straight white male, I'm still lower down on the class system. I was, brought up in my early years on a well-known dodgy estate from around my way, the Mardyke, for anyone who's local. I've grown up in council houses on estates, a council flat on an estate, a council house then further down the road. And only when I moved out did I then go private rental, which has then destroyed me. So I'm low down on the class system. So I know the struggles. This is where it's almost hypocritical. I can't afford and I can't risk going out to protests because of my children and the work my partner does. I can't risk it. So I have to support from afar. And the only way I can think to do that is to speak out, like I did with my What I've Learned Through Racism video. And then the tweets I put out, just to make sure that those voices are spread as much as possible. And yeah, someone asking why I care so much. And it's like, because honestly, it's not fair. I want to see a better world where everyone is treated equal.
I think that, to sort of summarize how I feel about it, societies that are equal are happier societies. So it's like, if you live in a society of inequality, you become one of the people who separates themselves from society and lives in their own little bubble of money and privilege, so that you don't have to see the pain and the discomfort of other people. If you're a person who just wants to be part of general society and see everybody, reasonably happy and interacting properly, and there not being no-go areas and everybody having decent healthcare and decent housing, then you realise that once everybody has that, everybody benefits. And that's where we want to get to. And I'm really quite hopeful now that things will change, because I've had conversations with people and they've said, well, yeah, but once this particular X, Y, or Z is over, it'll all go back to the way it was. And I'm like, well, I think it won't, because the young people who my age, we don't count. I don't count. It's the young people who count in this situation. You're hoping that they're seeing that there's a different way of living. And when they grow up and they take the reins of power, they will make it change. And you have to have that hopefulness. And I do have that hopefulness, and I do think things will change. So, yeah, we're living in a really horrible time, but I do see that really nice, things potentially happening in the future.
Yeah, no, and again, you're singing from the same hymn sheet as well. And the hope is that we do start to get it right in some areas, and then it's a snowball effect. The protests, I do honestly think the protests that we're seeing now are showing that it works, and that's where we're going to see the change. It's not going to be the easier change that I thought it was going to be. I think it is going to be a fought-for change. But those who have had it easy for so long now are going to notice that they're going to see a lot more pushback from minorities. And I don't just mean people of colour, I don't just mean sexual preference, I mean from the lower classes as well. An uprising is going to happen. But yeah, anyway, I don't think you can ever go on long enough about stuff like that. But for this episode, we'll call it on that one. So yeah, as usual, join us on Discord if you need somewhere to reach out with regards to your mental health, or even just if you want to chat games, it's there. You can find the link at the top of the site. We're doing a lot more content on YouTube now, so please go subscribe there. If you want to support us, please donate via Coffee or Patreon. But yeah, that's been the show. Thanks to Shu for joining me, and we will catch you again next week. Stay safe.